Good morning, students. Welcome to class 10, economic chapter 2, sectors of the Indian economy. Here you must understand that what are economic activities, what are non-economic activities. All the activities give an income or remuneration or payment is called economic activity. We are doing so many activities from dawn to dusk. These activities are classified into two. They are economic activity and non-economic activity. For example, your mother asks you to go to the market and purchase some fruits and vegetables. You are going to the market. At the same time, the seller also is going to the market and he sells the goods. So this is both are coming to the market is a activity. Here the seller activity, I mean the shopkeeper activity is a economic activity, whereas your activity is non-economic activity. Like that, there is one more example. You are coming to school, I am also coming to school. Here I am taking lesson, in the school I am taking lesson, you are learning the different subjects. So here I am getting payment, you are not getting payment. So your activity is non-economic activity and my activity is economic activity. Clear? Now let us go to that. How the economic activities are classified. It is divided into different reason. Here first we are going to discuss the sectors of economic activity is based on nature, that is primary activity, secondary activity and tertiary activity. Besides this, there are other four ways also is divided. It is based on the ownership, mainly that public sector, private sector, joint sector and cooperative sector. But in this lesson, as far as concerned, in this lesson we are going to discuss only that two sectors, that is public sector and private sector only. You will learn in higher classes about the remaining two sectors, that is cooperative sectors and what is that, joint sector, and these are the remaining two sectors you will read in higher classes. Apart from this, there is based on their working condition or benefits, it is divided into two more sectors. They are organized sector and unorganized sector. Clear? Right. Now let us understand first primary sector. What is primary sector? The people who are engaged in the nature and exploit the nature and they are producing goods. This activity is called primary sector activity, mainly that agriculture, mining, fisheries, forestry, animal husbandry, beekeeping and so on. These are the different people are engaged in different activity in the depend on nature. Therefore, this activity is called primary activity. The second one is the secondary sector. Secondary sector. This sector, people are producing the primary product into a final product. Therefore, this activity is called secondary sector activity. Example, all the industries, factories, workshops, then what is called that, cottage industries. These are the examples for the secondary sector activity. Third one is the tertiary sector activity. This sector is mainly doing service. Therefore, this sector is always called service sector. Like that, secondary sector is always called industrial sector, and primary sector is always called agricultural related sector. Clear? Right. The tertiary sector is always called, I told you, service sector. This sector mainly that service like transport, communication, not only this, also there are some essential activity like healthcare, education, recreation, hotels and so many other banking, what is called the insurance. So these are all is included in the tertiary sector activity. So here you should keep it in mind, the three sectors are individual sector, but they are interlinked to each other. Try to understand what is the interlinked means. They are dependent on each other. Let us discuss through the four examples. What are the first we take how the primary sector depend on how the secondary sector depend on the primary sector. For example, the farmers produce sugarcane and the cotton. These two product, they are they refuse to send their product to the neighboring industry, sugar industry or textile industry, cotton textile industry, if what would happen, the mill would will have to close down. So this is the example for the secondary sector depend on the primary sector. Otherwise, in other ways, if you are thinking how the primary sector depend on the secondary sector, here the sugar industry owner or cotton textile industry owner do not purchase any product from Indian farmers. They are import all the goods from other countries. So the farmers is the people who engage in cultivation of sugarcane or cotton. They they face a great loss in their product, or the price of the cotton or sugarcane will decrease, so they may become bankrupt. So this is example for the primary sector depend on the secondary sector. How the tertiary sector also is depend on these two sectors. The tertiary sector people, not only the tertiary sector people, even the consumers, everybody's are need certain basic needs like food, shelter, cloth. Suppose the tertiary sector was, for a small example, the tertiary sector transport or communication went on strike. What would happen? People do not get any product, milk, food, vegetables, fruits. They do not get any such products. At the same time, primary sector products will not reach the industry sector, and industry sector products will not reach the market. So this will affect totally all the sectors. This is the example that all the three sectors are interdependent each other. Clear? Now let us understand that what is GDP. GDP is nothing but G for gross, D for domestic, P for product. GDP is nothing but it is a total value of all the three sectors, goods and services calculated in a particular country in a particular year is called GDP. Let us understand, before we calculate GDP, we must have in mind two conditions. Condition number one, consider the value of goods and services rather than adding actual numbers. Why here we should not add the actual numbers? There is a reason behind this. One reason, for example, we take number of we should not take number of products in the primary sector, because it is very you might think it is impossible. Why I say this? Number of coconuts produced by a farmer, a number of quantity or bags of wheat or rice or whatever is produced by a farmer, and number of cars produced, number of fans, computer, cell phone. So how to calculate all these numbers? It will make a very difficult calculation, and also is wrong calculation. Another example, you take suppose same secondary sector, same product like car. One car is Santro car, another car is Innova car. So the Santro car rate is lesser than the Innova car. Innova car is very high, you know very well. So this, if you are calculating number of cars, suppose Santro car produced 50 cars in a year, and Innova car produced only 20 cars, means we should not imagine that Santro car is bigger than the Innova car. So not like that. Therefore, if you are adding like this number of goods produced in the each sectors, this will make a lot of confusion, and it is not correct method. Therefore, we should not calculate the number of goods and services. We should calculate only the value of each and every product. Clear? Right. The next condition is consider only the final goods and service. Why final goods? That is important, because another example I can show this. A farmer produced wheat, and he sold the product wheat 8 rupees per kg to the flour mill. The flour mill purchased this wheat and grind and wheat flour, and he sold the wheat flour to a biscuit company, and the biscuit company is adding some ingredients. It is called intermediate goods like sugar, ghee and oil, salt, and so many other ingredients he is adding, and finally he fixed the 15 rupees per packet. He produced 4 packets by this 1 kg of wheat flour. So this is the way that the goods are valued, because if you are calculating the 8 rupees by a farmer and 10 rupees by wheat flour and remaining 50 rupees means it goes wrong calculation. Therefore we should always calculate the final goods and services. The next important is historical changes, change in sectors, 3 sectors. 2 centuries before, imagine 2 centuries before, primary sector was the only sector which was most important sector, even nowadays also, but the primary sector was existed in those days, because before independence, during the colonial period, it was only sector. People, that much of industries were not developed in colonial period, so most of the people are engaged only in primary sector. That's why it is the most important sector 200 years before, and even after this, at the time of independence also is not much developed. Slowly it was gradually developed. The other sectors, mainly that secondary sector, increase in the number of craft persons and traders, transport system, army, administration and etc. So this after independence is gradually developed, which led to a increase in buying and selling of goods. Therefore, more number of industries are set up. Also, it is government duty to provide more job or create more job opportunity in industries. Therefore, the government set up more industries. So, at this stage, goods were produced from natural products, and most of the people employed in this sector, that is the emergence of factories and industries, which led to produce goods at a cheaper rate. So, more people are getting more goods at a cheaper rate. So, this led to secondary sector, the most important sector in total production total production and employment. This is happening after independence to 1970. Why I said this? I will tell you in the next chart, which led to that tertiary sector, future sector from secondary sector to tertiary sector, which led to secondary sector. This is a bar diagram, shows that share of GDP and share of sectors in 3 primary, secondary and tertiary sector. The brown color shows that tertiary sector, and the blue color shows the secondary sector, and green color shows the primary sector. So now you are clear that this is here is given a scale of measurement. The scale of measurements are given in crores. How much of and also there is a 2 period of years given, 1970 to 71 and 2010 to 11. That means from 1970 to 71, how much of which are the sectors are developed, which are the sectors are important, which are the which are the sectors are grown up very well, and this after 40 years, which sector is grown much more than that of the remaining 2. So from this we understand 1970 to 71. In this sector, if you see that in this also is primary sector is bigger than that of remaining 2 sectors, and in 2010 and 11 it become the tertiary sector is grown much bigger than that of the remaining 2 sectors. So the GDP of the 3 sectors rising, importance of the tertiary sector. Why? Tertiary sector is most important sector, or it is grown a very big sector, largest sector in the among the 3. The main reason in all the countries, if any country, several services such as hospitals, educational institutions, post and telegraph services, police stations, courts, village administrative offices, municipal corporations, defense, transports, banks, insurance companies, etc. are required. These are very important in the modern world. Therefore, these sectors are belonging to tertiary sector. These can be considered as a basic services. At present, these are the services are most important and basic services. In a developing country, the government has to take responsibility for the provision of these services. The second reason is the development of agriculture and industry leads to the development of services such as transports, trade, storage, and the like as we have already seen. So the primary sector and secondary sector is once developed. The tertiary sector, transport, communication, trade, storage facilities, communication, what's called that internet, and so many other courier service, all these services is become more important. So the greater the development of the primary and secondary sectors, more would be the demand for tertiary sector services. The third important reason how why the tertiary sector is grown up, as income levels of the people is increased, certain sections of the people start demanding many more services like eating out. That is, they are take on a weekend, they visit some new places or a picnic spot, they enjoy the day and they spend more money and they want to take their eating out. So these are all is happening. Also every month or once in a year they visit new places like temple service, a temple as pilgrimage centers or other important tourism places. So tourism is also belong to tertiary sector, and the people wanted to making shopping, and also they visit, if they are any disease, they immediately they go to private hospital, because private hospitals are well managed and pakka. So they visit mostly the private hospitals. Like that, the private schools they seek only the private schools and professional training centers. These are the because their economic level is improved, they go these places. These are the important services they demand. You can see this change quite sharply in the cities, especially in big cities like Chennai, Coimbatore, Madurai, and even other states like Bangalore, Hyderabad. You know very well, Bangalore city is electronic city. So these are because of this reason the tertiary sector is improved. The fourth reason is, over the past decade also, certain new services such as those based on information and communication technology have become important and essential, because all the people now after 2010 more number of people are using Android mobile phone. So they wanted to keep touch with the world within their location or wherever they are going. So wherever they are living, they use the internet. So this essential service become an essential service. The production of these services has been rising rapidly. In chapter 4 we shall see examples of these new services and the reasons for their expansion. That is, we will read in the same economic lesson, chapter 4, globalization lesson. MNCs, we will read about MNCs. Because of this reason, the tertiary sector is developed in 40 years later, 2010 to 11, it was increased, the GDP is increased. This bar diagram shows that shares of sectors GDP in percentage. See that percentage, primary sector is 40, whereas industrial sector is only 3, less than 3, and I mean 30 only, and the second tertiary sector is more than 40. So from this what we understand that it is 1972-71. At the same time, in 2010 to 11, primary sector is very less, and secondary sector is also is little bit improved, but it is not much comparatively with the tertiary sector. It is not much improved in 2010 and 11. The last one is the bar diagram shows that sectors of employment percentage, number of how many percentage of people are engaged in each sector. No doubt 1970 and 71 the primary sector is higher, and 2010 and to 11 also primary sector share of employment is higher. But what is the reason? Because most of the people, we know very well, already we discussed here, primary sector is most important sector because it will provide food for all the people, not only the primary, secondary, tertiary sector. Even who are not belonging in these sectors, the people, total population of the country is provided field by the primary sector only. So that what more number of people are engaged. But even though the more number of people are engaged in primary sector, but GDP is why it is lesser. We will discuss now. 2 represents the percentage of share of the 3 sectors in GDP. Now we can directly see the changing importance of the sectors over the 40 years, that is from 1972-71 to 2010 to 2011. Remember, a remarkable fact about India is that while there has been a change in the share of the 3 sectors in GDP, a similar shift has not been taken place in employment. Graph 3, that is the last one, the graph 3 shows that the share of the employment in the 3 sectors in 1970 to 71 and 2010 to 2011, the primary sector continues to be the largest employer even now. Because why it is happened, a similar shift out of primary sector happened in case of the employment. It is because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sectors. Even though industrial output or the production of goods went up by more than 9 times during the period of employment in the industry went up by around 3 times. The same applies to tertiary sectors as well. While production in this service sector rose by more than 14 times, employment in the service sector rose around only 5 times. So this variation shows in the third bar diagram. As a result, more than half of the workers in the country are working in primary sector, mainly in agriculture, producing only a quarter of the GDP. Note this, more number of people are engaged in primary sector, but they produce only quarter of the GDP. In contrast to this, the secondary and tertiary sectors produce 3/4 of the produce, whereas they employ less than half of the people. Does this mean that the workers in agriculture are not producing as much as they could? What it means that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. So even if you move a few people out, that means taken out from the activity, economic activity, the production will not be affected anyway. In other words, workers in agriculture sectors are underemployed because, for example, here is a story given in your book, page number 26. You later on go through the page number 26. Here a farmer who is having a very small piece of land and does not have any modern irrigation facilities. Her family members are totally 5 members. All the members are engaged only in the land, but their production is very less. Even if in this small piece of land only 2 members is enough, the 3 members are extra working, but there is no any development in the GDP or in the production. So if you remove the remaining 3 people, the production will not be affected. So the people who are like this working in the more number of people working in the agriculture land, it is called underemployment. This underemployment is a hidden contrast to someone who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence it is also called disguised unemployment. That is unemployment, disguised unemployment. Unemployment is 2 kinds. The people who are ready to work but they do not found any kind of work, those people are called unemployment. The people who are working in a land but more number of people are working, the final result is 0. So those people comes under disguised unemployment. This you must be very clear, understand. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in a regular class. Now we have to discuss one more thing, that this underemployment can also happen in other sectors. For example, there are thousands of casual workers in the service sectors in urban areas who search for daily employment. They are employed as painters, plumbers, repair persons, and other doing odd jobs. Many of them do not find other people of the service sector on the street pushing a cart or selling something where they may spend the whole day but earn very little. They are doing this work because they do not have better opportunities. We discussed in the bar diagram, there are some shortcomings of share of GDP and share of employment. Now let us discuss how to create more employment and increase the GDP. First we discuss rural area and urban area, how to increase the more job opportunity. Providing loans to the small farmers, because small farmers cannot get more profit, therefore they cannot improve their agricultural facilities. If the government or banks provide a loan opportunity, they can purchase modern agricultural implements like HVV seeds, pump sets, and they can supply the electricity and also the tractors, and these are the modern equipments or modern machineries they can implement in the agriculture. It increase their production, also they get more profit. The second is construction of dams for agriculture. The government construct dams in regions where very dry regions. They can construct canals and they supply the water irrigation facilities. If it is increased, the people who are living in the rural areas, they get regular job opportunity in agricultural field itself. And there is transportation and storage facility should be improved. This also is benefited the farmers. If there is goods are getting, because you know very well the agricultural products are decay very short period. So to prevent this decaying, they can store the goods in the storage facility, storage rooms, and they can sell the product when it is increase the prices. This is the way they can improve their GDP. And also the NABARD Bank, there is a National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. NABARD Bank is established in every rural areas, and the bank provide economic supports, financial support for the farmers. So this is the way that the farmers can improve their production. And the fifth one is the tourism. If it is developed, tourism developed in rural areas, because Madurai Meenakshi Temple is a pilgrim center. Also Thiruvannamalai Temple, Srirangam Temple, Tirupati Temple, and Thiruvannamalai Temple. These temples are located in the very big cities, and therefore the people are getting more job opportunities. There are some rural areas also, some tourist spot like Yerkad, Kolli Hills in Namakkal. So these are the areas are still underdeveloped. If the government is provide facilities in these regions and more transport facilities and large facilities are provided, then people visit there, and people who are living in that regions, they increase their production. Also the regional craft industries also should be encouraged by the government. The government itself is purchase and sell the goods in the big cities. So this is where the government can support the rural people for their employment and GDP. Also in urban area, reformation of educational system. The government present educational system is not increase the job opportunities. The government concentrate more in the vocational groups and professional groups. The government implement all the governments now there are certain government schools only is available to the vocational groups. The government should increase all the government schools professional courses and vocational courses. So this will help for the people in urban areas. Production of decentralization and dispersal of industrial activity. The government should provide more job opportunities, construction of industries and other facilities. So this is where the government can improve the educated people get job opportunities. And the third one is the development of production with low capital intensity. The government also is involved in the setting up of the semi-rural areas like dal mills and other leather factories, coir industries. These are the small scale industries can be supported by the government investment, and therefore the people who are living around this area get job opportunities. And the fifth one is the provision of infrastructure like roads, hospitals, schools, etc. This also is because 46.9% of population of the country of our country is 5 to age group 5 to 29 age group. In the out of this only 52% of 52%, imagine, only 52% of children are getting education, remaining are at home or they are going as working as child labor. So if all those children getting educational facilities, then they can increase the number of job opportunity in the education department alone. And also the planning commission, now it is called Niti Aayog, also is always telling that if the tourism becoming a fourth sector, that is primary, secondary, tertiary sector, beyond these three, there is the tourism alone is becoming a separate sector. There is 35 lakhs of people getting job opportunity. This is noted by the planning commission. So this is the way that government can increase the GDP of three sectors and employment share. The next one is National Rural Employment, that is NREGA, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act of 2005. In 2005, the act was introduced as a right to work. According to that, it becoming a fundamental right. So all the people should be getting any kind of work. So this is act is giving guarantee for their occupation. The people, particularly in the rural areas. This was first initially introduced only 200 districts. Later on, it was implemented other 130 districts. And in 1st April 2008, it was introduced in all the districts in India. So therefore, it is called National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. And the NREG Act also ensures 100 days of employment. If the government fails giving work for the people, rural people, the government have to give the unemployment allowance. That is every 100 days how much of they are giving, the total amount will be given as a allowance. So this is the way that NREG Act become a right to work. The next we are going to discuss organizational sector, another sector. It is another division of economic sector based on the working condition. Now imagine the two persons. One person is working in the government office or government in his field. The another one person is working in building construction or some other grocery shop or tea shop or any private road construction. So in this, imagine those two people, and then only you can understand the further the points what I am going to explain you. In the organized sector, there is a regular employment. They have worked continuously or till their retirement age. In central government it is 60 years, and in the state government it is 58 years, and due to this corona period it is increased 1 year, extended 59 years. So they get a regular employment opportunity in the organized sector. First of all, you must understand what are the organized sectors. They strictly follow the government rules and regulations. They registered in the government. They have some what's called that they follow certain rules and regulations. Then only they can consider as not only the government field, also the private also, which are the private also is following certain rules and regulations by the government. They are also is included in organized sector. For example, private schools, our school, and some other matriculation schools, also beyond the schools, TVS company, Reliance company, these companies also comes under organized sector because they are giving the facilities which are given here, they are enjoying, therefore they are called organized sector. So the next one is the better wages. They get minimum wage act. The organized sector strictly follow the minimum wage act and equal remuneration act. So these are the act. According to this act, they are giving better wages. The third one is a good working condition. They have seats are provided. They are sitting under a fan, or even sometimes if they are higher officers, they are working in the AC rooms. So these are the way that they have some assistants. So these are the way the work is going on in the organized sector. So good working conditions, secured job. The government employee or any private job, the organized sector private jobs also is secured jobs. They cannot easily removed by the organization. So their job is secured jobs. Fixed working hours. They have fixed working hours. If there is extended, they are given double payment. So these are the benefits enjoyed in the organized sector, and also paid holidays and leaves for every Sundays. They can not only Sundays, any government holidays. This also is paid for them. So these are the benefits enjoyed by the organized sector employees. And unorganized sectors, these sector people who are working in daily wages. Already told you, the people who are working in grocery shops, tea shops, construction work. So these people are their job is irregular. Therefore, they do not. One day they get job, or another day they do not get job. So their job is not guaranteed or regular, and their wages are very less. It is not given government. The minimum wages act they do not follow. Also, poor working conditions. They have to work in the very top floor. They do not have any safety measures, or in the hot suns they have to work. Including not only the private jobs, even agricultural activity also comes under organized sector. Their job is not secured, so there is no job security for them. Unlimited working hours. They are working more than 8 hours. So all over the world, the working hours is fixed by the ILO, that is International Labour Organization, is more concentrated on the unorganized sectors. They enforce the governments in the world. They wanted to take care of the unorganized sector employees. So the fixed hours, minimum 8 hours. If they are working more hours, they should be paid double. So these are the implementation should be implemented by the government. Strictly follow the rules and regulations. Then and there the government will visit the unorganized sector working areas, and they inquire the employees whether their provisions are given properly or not. So these are the way that they can improve. Unlimited working hours can be reduced. No paid holidays and leaves are given in the unorganized sectors. If they are coming, suppose working hours like Monday, working weeks like Monday to Friday or Saturday, they are working, they can get payment. If they are not working, including Wednesday or Thursday or Monday, any day, if they are taking leave, even holidays also they must work. If they are not working, there is no payment for them. So these are the condition of unorganized sectors. Now let us understand how to protect workers in the unorganized sectors. First of all, you must understand who are the people are affected. As the workers in the unorganized sector are low paid, not regular, and are exploited in the different ways, there is a need for their protection. The following steps should be taken to provide protection and support to them. Number one, generally the vulnerable people in the unorganized sector are landless agricultural laborers, small and marginal farmers, carpenters, etc., who should be given support by the government. For example, small farmers who comprise 80% of the rural households should be supported in procuring seeds, agricultural inputs, credit storage facilities, and marketing outlets. The second important is the major of the workers are generally from the low caste. They are also socially discriminated. The government should take steps to ensure equal treatment for all. Minimum Wages Act should be passed and enforced strictly. The government should take steps to ensure regulation of working hours and grant of medical facilities, etc. Finally, the government should take strict action against those employers who discriminate on account of caste, creed and gender. So this must be government strictly follow the rules and regulations what the Constitution of India says. Next is a sector based on the ownership. That is who own the property and who maintain or manage the maintenance of office or whatever is so called. So it is divided into two, public sector and private sector. The public sector are controlled by government. Also it is a main motive is welfare. It never start for the profit motive. So they are mainly for welfare motive. It provides a basic service. Not only basic service, they also provide other services like communication, transport facilities. Example, railways. Railways are not only railways, postal telegram. BSNL, you know very well. It is a communication system that we are government. It is owned by government, and the private sector is controlled by private individuals. It is mainly the profit motive. Their main aim is profit. So they provide a wide range of services. Best example is Tata Tisco. That is Tata Iron and Steel Company, that is TISCO, TISCO, T for Tata, I for iron, S for steel, CO for company. So TISCO, not only that RIL, that is Reliance Industry Limited. Here also I forgot to tell you, that is not only the post and telegram or transport facilities, also they are running production units like BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electric Limited. In Salem there is SAIL, SEIL, Steel Authority of India Limited, SAIL. Then what's called that Malco, Nalco. These are the government public sector production units. Try to understand. BHEL, SAIL, Malco. These are the companies run by central government, and they provide job opportunity. It is industrial. They are producing the goods, and therefore these are the industrial sector run by government public sector. Private sector mainly that Tata, Tisco and Reliance. These are the best example. Even TVS is a private sector. So these are the two important sectors of Indian economy. Let us discuss the public sector gives economic growth. How? Let us discuss now. The public sector contributes to economic development of a nation in the way that is it promotes rapid economic development through creation and expansion of infrastructure. It creates employment opportunities. It generates financial resources for development. It is ensuring equality of income, wealth, and thus a balanced regional development. It encourages development of small, medium and cottage industries. It ensures easy availability of goods at moderate rates. It contributes to community development, that is to the Human Development Index, HDI. Via the previous chapter we discussed HDI, Human Development Index, through the health and education services. So these are the way that public sector gives economic growth for the nation. So now I will sum up the lesson what we discussed so far. In this chapter we have looked at ways of classifying economic activities into some meaningful groups. One way of doing this is to examine whether the activity relates to the primary, secondary or tertiary sectors. The data for India for the last 40 years, that is 4 decades, shows that while goods and services produced in the tertiary sector contribute the most to GDP, the employment remains in the primary sector. We have also seen what all can be done in increasing employment opportunities in the country. That is we discussed in this in this chart flow, in the flow chart. Another classification is to consider whether the people are working in the organized sector or unorganized sector. In whatever way the organized sector people, unorganized sector people are vary in their working condition, and also most of the people are working in the unorganized sector. Note this, most of the people are working in unorganized sector, so the government should be take measures to protect them. We also looked at the difference between private and public activities and why it is important for the public activities to focus on certain areas. So with this the chapter is gets over. We will discuss the new chapter in new subject, whether history or economics or geography or politics. Have a nice day. Thank you.